First, let me find out whether the good evening, everyone. Just let me find out whether the whiteboard is working or not. Maybe they have done some change in the setting. I had requested them. Just let me know. It's working. Are you able to see whiteboard? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Now, we'll continue with national interest. In fact, we are discussing the topic, the core let me refer to the syllabus for a moment. Yes. We are discussing key components of international relation, and in that context, the first component we have started with is a component of national interest. So what are the key components of national interest? National interest is a very inclusive term, and it would include several things. There is no need for us to go into details. I will be putting my focus on the theory of national interest. In fact, when we talk about national interest, security is one of the important points. Security of the nation, economic development, sovereignty of the country, sovereignty and national integrity of the country, favorable conditions of trade, strengthening of national organization. All these points we have already discussed. We have already discussed the vital and non-vital components of national interest. We have discussed the primary interest, secondary interest, permanent interest, variable interest. All these points we have already discussed in our class on last Friday. Specific interest, international interest, conflicting interest, identical, non-identical interest. All these points we have already discussed. Now, today we'll start with the method of securing national interest. How can we secure our national interest? We'll be putting our focus on method of securing our national interest. How can a country secure its national interest? This is the question which can be asked. Again, here I'll just be referring to key points of this. If you are getting a question on what are the methods of securing the country's national interest. For example, diplomacy is the most important thing. Diplomacy means art, or you can say the skill of negotiation. How do you negotiate? Because diplomacy is the most important thing, which includes your bargaining power. Which includes your bargaining power. How effectively you can bargain with your opponents, or how you can effectively bargain with the other states with whom you are into relationship. So when you talk about method of securing national interest, we talk about diplomacy. Diplomacy is the most important thing, because, for example, you are trying to negotiate a trade deal. You're trying to negotiate a trade deal. You are trying to negotiate an arms deal. So while negotiating a trade deal, while negotiating an arms deal, or while negotiating any kind of treaty, diplomacy is the most important thing. So when you talk about method of securing national interest, so diplomacy is the most crucial aspect of that. Right. Then the method of securing national interest is, for example, economic tools or economic method of securing a national interest. When you talk about economic tools of securing a national interest, economic tools of securing a national interest. So in that, you talk about, for example, trade. Trade is something which helps you in promoting your national interest. For example, you want to sell your surplus product in the overseas market, or you want to buy a stuff for which you have a scarcity. For example, energy. energy import. India is one of the largest importer of energy in the world. All right. So trade is the most important thing, particularly in an era of interdependency among countries of the world. Trade becomes very important. So when we talk about economic tools or economic method of securing your national interest, so trade is one of the most important things. Sometimes you need aid, to carry out your economic activities. You need aid and assistance from others. Uh, Sometimes you need FDI. FDI. You need FDI. You need investment. You need technical know-how. All right. So that would be coming under what we call is economic dimensions of securing a national interest, or economic method of securing a national interest. The first point I mentioned is about how diplomacy helps you in strengthening or securing national interest. Then the second point, we talk about the what is known as the economic tools. Economic tools or uh, uh, economic tools of securing national interest: trade, aid, trade, uh, investment. One example we can give here, for example, we talk about the OBOR, One Belt, One Road initiative of China, or now it is known as BRI project of China, Border Road initiative of China. All right. These are all the economic tools. China is in order to strengthen its trade base, is going for a One Belt, One Road initiative, or what is known as the BRI, Border Road Initiative project. So these are again the economic tools. So, or I told you about FDI. India is keen to secure FDI, foreign direct investment, to strengthen its economy. So our goal of building India a $5 trillion economy, that would not be possible unless and until we get some investment flows, or we get some investment from outside. All right. So these are the economic tools. The question that you can be asked is, what are the methods of securing national interest? In that we talk about the diplomacy, in that we talk about the economic method. All right. Then other method of securing our national interest, for example. All right. So other method of securing our national interest. So we have already talked about diplomacy. I just wanted to view the point. This we have talked about. Okay. Then we have also talked about the economic method. I've given you several examples. We have talked about that. Then the third method of securing a national interest is alliance and treaties. You need friends and allies, You need alliance and treaties for securing a national interest. Alliance and treaties mean what I have in mind. Let us take some example. See, when we talk about NATO, in order to secure the national interest, in order to secure their interest, the countries like US and the other countries of Europe, they have entered into a defense pact. NATO is a kind of alliance which helps European countries and the US in promoting the national interest. Right? Or the treaties which you enter into with the country. For example, we can take about the Indo-US civil nuclear deal. Indo-US civil nuclear deal. The treaty is signed between India and US for nuclear for what is known as the nuclear deal. In order to produce more and more nuclear energy on our own country, the India and US have entered into. It's not. It's in the nuclear deal that we have entered into. It is for a peaceful purposes, for producing nuclear power, and not for producing nuclear weapons. So India and US have entered into a nuclear Indo-US civil nuclear deal, again a kind of treaty. Or with some treaties we enter into, for example, Bangladesh, we have entered into water sharing agreement. With Pakistan, we have entered into water sharing agreement. Right. So alliance and treaties is very important. When we talk about alliance and treaties, that also helps you in strengthening your security base. Now, NATO, we had two major kind of alliances in the world. You know, at one point of time, we had the Soviet alliance, what was known as the Warsaw Pact, and then we have the NATO. All right, Warsaw Pact between Russia, Soviet Union and other countries of Eastern Europe, or the NATO, a kind of Western alliance between US and other European countries. All right. So alliance entities, they are promoting the national interest of the country, either by strengthening the security or by increasing the economic cooperation and collaboration between the countries. So one of the method of securing national interests is through alliance entities. All right. Sometimes, sometimes it's also said that there is also a coercive method of promoting your national interest. Coercive method, when you use power as a brute force. For example, see, you are aware of the fact that anything and everything that nation state does or state does, it tries to justify it in the name of national interest. The U.S. intervention in Afghanistan, U.S. intervention in Iraq, U.S. intervention in Vietnam, U.S. intervention in Syria, or Russian intervention, or earlier Soviet intervention in different parts of the world. All these interventions, they are the countries they try to justify in the name of the national interest. All right. So sometimes, in order to secure their national interest, the countries also take resort to coercive method, using power as a brute force. All right. Or for some example, the U.S. policy, of what is known as CATSA, countering American adversaries through sanctions. CATSA, CAATS. This is a U.S. policy, countering American adversaries through sanctions. That any country, any U.S. friend, any U.S. ally, importing any country importing any country entering into a kind of, for example, any country importing oil from Iran, okay, would be meeting the U.S. sanctions. All right. Or any country buying F-400 missiles from Russia, would be facing the U.S. sanctions. So economic sanctions, political sanctions would be imposed by U.S. on those countries who are dealing with American adversaries or who are having any truck with U.S. adversaries. That is called countering American adversaries through sanctions. That's a policy. So this all would be coming under the coercive method of securing the national interest. All right. So, or you impose sanctions on certain countries, economic sanctions on certain countries. For example, when Russia intervened into Ukraine, and when Russia annexed Crimea in particular, the entire Western world, including the US, had imposed food sanctions on Russia, that no country would be supplying food material or food stuff to Russia for a year or so. So that was the kind of sanction imposed by US. So when we talk about coercive method of securing national interest, it could be intervention, it could be sanctions, it could be boycott, it could be retaliation of a country, so on and so forth. All right. Or it could be also severing the relationship with the country, severance of relationship. That means whatever relationship you have with a particular country, you would like to sever that relationship, do away with the relationship with the country. All right. So that is a coercive method of securing your national interest. All right. When we talk about the coercive method, again, just keep in mind the examples. We can talk about surgical strike by India on the terror training camps that is going on in Pakistan. That was for the purpose of securing India's national interest, because India's national interest is in curbing global terrorism, destroy uh, the terror training centers. That is the national interest of India. Uh, so surgical strike would again be coming under the coercive method of securing your national interest. Correct. So there could be a peaceful method, that is diplomatic method. There could be economic method. There could be alliance and treaties. There could be coercive. So different methods we could apply to secure our national interest. You can be asked a question: what are the methods of securing your national interest? So you can talk about these points. All right. No need for us to go into further details. All right. Then the other important point that we need to focus upon when we talk about the national interest, uh, it is about dynamics of national interest, dynamic nature of national interest. See, national interest is dynamic in character. Dynamic in character means what is in your national interest now may not be there in your national interest, say after 10 years or after 5 years, right? Or a policy which you have been pursuing till now, all of a sudden you will have to change that policy because you want to because of the changing character of changing nature of international politics. All right. So national interest is dynamic and it is always subject to change. Okay. So what we need to understand here is uh, dynamics of national interest. Dynamics of national interest. Now, why we say dynamics of national interest? Because national interest is not static. I'll give you a few examples here to say that. What do I mean by dynamics of national interest? Right. See, uh, before we started a policy of economic liberalization, the policy that we are following was known as policy of India was following a policy of protectionism. Hmm? Means we, in order to support our own domestic manufacturing, in order to support our own domestic sector, manufacturing sector, we used to impose high duties on the foreign products, on the imported products. For example, on on the imported cars or imported electronic goods, the duties would go up to 400 and even 500. Why? Because we wanted to encourage our industries. If we allow goods from other countries to be openly sold in our market, so what is going to happen is that uh, our goods, our products will not be able to face the competition with the Western goods. So we pursued a policy of protectionism, and in order to protect our own domestic industries, okay, we were imposing higher tariff or higher custom duties on the products from other countries. So that is called policy of protectionism. So protectionism was considered to be the national interest of India. See, I'm just trying to make you understand what is dynamics of national interest. But after that, what happened? In 1991, when India adopted a policy of economic liberalization, so we had to open up our trade, we have to open up our economy, and this policy of protectionism will have to go. Why it will have to go? Because you have to give a you have to give a, you have to give an you have to provide an open field to the products from other countries, because otherwise they will not allow you to sell your products in their country. Point. So you have to open up your economy in the line with the policy of free trade towards the goods manufactured by the other countries. So you have to open up your economy, and for that you will have to go on reducing your customs duties. So we have started doing that. So from a policy of protectionism, now we are following a policy of free trade. So that is what is known as dynamics of national interest. So what is in the national interest of one country at one point of time may not be in the national interest of the country at other point of time. So national interest is a very dynamic concept. To give another example, Soviet Union and later on Russia was the closest ally of India. All right. Now, for all our major military hardware, we are dependent on Russia. But Russia coming closer with China, Russia coming closer with even Pakistan, all right, and China becoming very powerful, and because of Sino-Pak proximity between China and Pakistan, all right. So, in order to protect its own interest in the Indo-Pacific region, all right, or and in order to counter China, countering China is a common objective of both India and US. And in order to counter China, right, which was trying to be very dominant, so in order to counter China, India had to enter into a pact. India had to enter into a relationship, and that was not only India's need, that was also the need of US. US also need India because India is a swing state. India is a major power, and India joining any country can alter the balance of power in favor of that country. The point. So what happened now? US with USA with the US with which we do not have a good relationship, till the year 2000. But 2005 onward, 2004-5 onwards, we started developing more cooperative engagement with the United States of America. So much so that there was an Indo-US civil nuclear agreement. All right. So India also needed US and USA also needed India in order to neutralize China. So this means now this is what is called dynamics of national interest. Now in today's perspective, because Russia is becoming a weak power, and secondly, we in order to modernize our defense, India had to diversify its import basket. So we went to Israel, we went to France, we went to US. Now all these countries are emerging as a major defense supplier. So modernization of our defense required that India enters into a special relationship, a special pact with a country like the United States of America. So that is what is known as dynamics of national interest. At one point of time, India was very close to Soviet Union, or India was very close to Russia. But now, what has happened is that gradually, US is replacing Russia as India's reliable partner. So that is again because of the dynamics of national interest. All right. So I just wanted to make you understand that if they ask you the question on dynamics of national interest, what exactly is the meaning of dynamics of national interest? Any doubt if you have in mind, you can ask. Now, what are the limitations of the concept of national interest? All of us understand that national interest is basically a true explanation of countries' foreign policy. Any foreign policy step taken by a country could be justified on the basis of its national interest. All right. Now let's try to understand what are the limitations of the concept of national interest. How the concept of national interest is limited. All right. There is an international policy expert, Raymond Aron, Raymond, Raymond Aron. Okay. He's talked about national interest as a pseudo theory. That is what we need to understand. What is this concept? National interest is a pseudo theory. Why is calling national interest as a pseudo theory? Pseudo means what? Sometimes we use the word pseudo secular. Pseudo is something which is what to say is sometimes we use the word pseudo, for double standard, or sometimes we use the pseudo word, also for what is known as something which is unrevealing and doesn't reflect the true character of a person. So we call it pseudo theory. Now, basically, when Raymond Aron talks about national interest as pseudo theory, what he's trying to say is that national interest is something which is a very subjective issue. Very subjective concept. And it is called a pseudo theory because it is very vague. You cannot make out anything of it. It is very vague, it is very subjective, and its meaning changes in accordance with the changing circumstances and changing context. So national interest is something, which is subjective, subjected to a situation, which is very vague in character, because something which is, because it's very difficult to understand. Or, for example, why I'm saying it's very difficult to understand and why it is called pseudo theory. It is a very vague concept. Now, Pakistan would say that cross-border infiltration, doing cross-border infiltration with India, in India, or giving support to the separatists in Jammu and Kashmir, or supplying weapons to the terror groups in India, is in the national interest of Pakistan. If it is not in the national interest of Pakistan, then why Pakistan is doing it? Are you getting a point? So everything that the Pakistan does against India, it tries to justify it in the name of national interest. So killing innocent people in a terrorist attack, doing cross-border infiltration, providing training to the terror groups, carrying out terror training camps inside Pakistan. All right, all these things would be considered to be in the national interest of Pakistan. So that is why we are calling it pseudo theory. How can doing a terrorist attack on a country, how could be in the national interest of a country? Got my point? So meaning of national interest changes. For India, India could never think in terms of doing a terror attack on Pakistan and justifying that in the national interest. India can never do that. So Raymond Aron says that national interest is a pseudo theory, and because of the reason that it is very vague, it is not clear. What is in your national interest may not be in the national interest of another country, or maybe not in the interest of other person. So it is very subjective. It is very subjective. What I'm saying is that, let me give you again an example. Now, whom you address as a terrorist, now Pakistanis would call it what is known as the freedom fighters. So you call them terrorists, you address them as terrorists. Pakistani people would call them freedom fighters. Now, because they are supporting them, because they say they are the freedom fighters. Now you are opposing them because that is against your national interest. They're creating terror, they're creating troubles for your country. So you are criticizing them. So same kind of situation being explained by two different countries, two different states, in two different facets, in two different manners. So it's a very subjective issue. Right. Now, the place which you call Pak-occupied Kashmir, the place captured by Pakistan, you call it Pak-occupied Kashmir. Right. Now, if you ask Pakistan, Pakistan would call it Azad Kashmir. The Kashmir is liberated by them. Got my point? So similar kind of situation could be explained in different manners by different states. So that is why Raymond Aron calls national interest a pseudo theory. So it can be asked a question that why national interest is considered as a pseudo theory. So I was trying to explain that its meaning is subjective and it can change from time to time and from circumstances to circumstances and from place to place. All right. So, and what is more important for us to understand is that there is ambiguity, there is a vagueness, there is ambiguity in the concept of national interest. And this ambiguity in the concept of national interest, or this lack of consensus among the experts, lack of consensus among the international relation experts on the question of national interest, okay, the lack of consensus, this again prevents the formulation of a most acceptable theory of national interest, a theory of national interest that is acceptable to all major countries of the world. So, because of the vagueness, because of the vagueness in the concept, because of what I said is ambiguity in the concept of national interest, all right, and because the national interest being very subjective issue, so formulation of a theory of national interest becomes very challenging task, very difficult task. All right. So I'm just trying to answer a question. If they ask you why national interest is considered to be a pseudo theory. Charles Beard. Uh, Basically, he is a Marxian scholar. All right. Now, I'll try to explain the theory of national interest from the Marxian perspective. Okay. All right. So Charles Beard was the first Marxian thinker. He was the first scholar who tried to do an analysis of the concept of national interest from the Marxian point of view. Right. Look into, I'll just be quoting Charles Beard, a very interesting quotation of Charles Beard. I just like to refer to that. And that will explain the Marxian notion of the national interest. What he said. He said, if citizens have to support a government which prosecutes them, if citizens have to support a government which prosecutes them, okay, if soldiers have to die for it, and if foreign policies have to confirm it, what better term can be other than the term of national interest? Let me repeat that. Charles Beard says, if citizens have to support a government which prosecutes them, if citizens have to support a government which prosecutes them, means a government which goes against the rights and freedom of the people, and if they are forced to support the government. Example, Mussolini in Italy. Example, Nazi in Germany, Hitler in Germany. In the name of the power of the state, in the name of the glorification of the state, okay? So the people supported the Nazi ruler Germany, even though it had crushed the rights and liberties of the people. So that is what Charles Beard says, if citizens have to support the government, which prosecutes them, which takes away the rights, which takes away the freedom, and if they have to support the government. Why? Because glorification of a state or all power to the state is something which is supposed to be the national interest of the country. So in the name of the national interest, people are supporting a government which prosecutes them. Got my point? Which prosecutes them. And when soldiers have to die for a country, how do you point? Pakistan doing a propaganda war against India, all right, and for no reason, Pakistan doing a propaganda war against India, or China doing what it did in the Gulf, what is known as incursion of a territory of another country, all right. And all these things in the name, what Charles Beard says is that, so all kind of foreign policy of Pakistan of doing a cross-border infiltration in India, Pakistan's policy of using non-state actors for creating troubles for India. This is the foreign policy of a country. Or China supporting Pakistan in preventing a declaration of a terrorist as an international terrorist inside the UN and even the UN Security Council. Look into that. Because making India weak, weakening of India, and using Pakistan as a pawn for fomenting troubles inside India. Now, China considers to its national interest, because if India gets weakened, and to weaken India, China and Pakistan go to any extent. All right. So foreign policies, the wrong foreign policies, unethical foreign policies are being undertaken and initiated by countries, and they are trying to justify it in the name of the national interest. Right. So national interest is something, the logic of national interest is something which in which you will not find any ethics, in which you will not find any morality, and in the name of national interest, you try to do all kind of things. All right. So national interest is basically a kind of slogan, a kind of umbrella, a kind of garb. In fact, the word used a garb. National interest is a kind of garb, and under the garb of that, all the wrong policies of the state are being justified. Okay, now. I would like to refer to Joseph Frankel here, just let me erase that. Joseph Frankel, Joseph Frankel says, in fact, I'm just trying to give you some logic for why national interest is considered to be a pseudo theory, if at all they ask you this question. They can ask you national interest is a pseudo kind of theory. A theory of national interest is a pseudo theory. Just I'm giving some justification for that. Joseph Frankel, he says that any search for a theory of national interest is useless. According to Joseph Frankel, any search for a theory of national interest is useless, because you cannot have any theory of national interest. All right. Because the term national interest is used for a variety of purposes and bid for variety of uses. I gave you an example that what you consider to be in your national interest may be against the interest of another country. All right. So Joseph Frankel says that any search for a theory of national interest is useless. And why? Because the term national interest is used in variety of ways, variety of purposes by the people, and there is no single meaning, and there is no single meaning to the concept of national interest. Because what is national interest for China? What is national interest for Pakistan? What is national interest for Russia? What is national interest for Japan? So every country. All right. Now, one example we can give here is for example, now USA is there is one motorcycle which is manufactured by the US, Harley Davidson motorcycle. Earlier, we used to impose a lot of very high level of customs duty on that. 100% customs duty we had to impose. Harley Davidson motorcycle, because India wants to protect and secure its own bike industry, which is in India. So in order to protect our domestic industry, so India used to impose heavy customs duties on the Harley Davidson motorcycle. Now, because that was supposed to be in the national interest of India to protect our domestic industries. But that was not in the national interest of Pakistan, the US, because US wanted to India to open up its market for that. So they were imposing a lot of pressure on India. So India ultimately reduced the customs duties from 100% to 50%. USA is not even satisfied with that. Now US wants India to reduce the customs duty on Harley Davidson motorcycles by 20%. I'll get your point. So what is in India's national interest and what is in US's national interest? They are two entirely different things. Right. So it is not possible to have a single meaning so far as the concept of national interest is concerned. Right. Oh. Muhammad Yunus. Now, uh, another international policy expert, Muhammad Yunus. Now, his concept is slightly different. Just I'm trying to uh, complete this theory of national interest with what Muhammad Yunus had said. Muhammad Yunus says that national interest is nothing but a means to promote the interest of elites, ruling elites. Try to understand. According to Muhammad Yunus, national interest is nothing but a means. He says it is NIE, national interest is a means to satisfy interest of elites. National interest is a means to satisfy the interest of the elites. That is what Muhammad Yunus says. Now, why is saying that? He published a book. The title of the book was Theory of National Interest. Muhammad Yunus, in his book Theory of National Interest, uh, he says uh, that it is a means to satisfy the interest of the elites. Can you tell me that how national interest can satisfy the interest of the elites? Any idea? How national interest, can you give some example that national interest satisfying the interest of the elites? What example can we give for this? How national interest is satisfying the interest of the elites? Any idea? Can you give me an example? Because according to Muhammad Yunus, national interest is not about the interest of the nation, it is about the interest of the elites. I'm asking you, can you give me any example for this? Uh, no, you have to give me some. You have to give me some examples from the international politics. Farm laws we have given. Can you give me some examples from international politics? Maybe lowering taxes, corporate taxes to invest more. Okay. Okay, now let me explain what I have in mind. The example that we can give from Pakistan, now military elites of Pakistan, both military elites and the ruling elites of Pakistan, they are never interested in normalization of relationship with India. Why? Because, and they are never interested that the problem of Jammu and Kashmir could be resolved. They're never interested in that. Why they are not interested? Because it is the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. See, the whole survival of Pakistan's ruling elite and whole survival of Pakistan's military elite depends upon the Kashmir factor, Jammu and Kashmir body. I don't know your point. In fact, it is in the interest of the ruling elites and military elites of Pakistan to keep the Kashmir issue alive. Let me explain this point in another way. If Kashmir issue gets resolved between India and Pakistan, suppose, for example, if Kashmir issue gets resolved between India and Pakistan, all right, or the relationship between India and Pakistan becomes normal. If Kashmir issue gets resolved, that is the only core issue between the two countries. And obviously, if Kashmir issue gets resolved, the relationship between India and Pakistan would become normal. All right. Now, who would be the ultimate sufferer? In case India's relationship with Pakistan improves or Kashmir issue gets resolved, it is the military, because the kind of luxury which the Pakistani military is enjoying, the huge investment that is made on Pakistan's defense expenditure, huge defense budget that the Pakistan has, is primarily on account of highlighting that India is a country which is trying to destabilize Pakistan. Threat from India is the primary basis, is the primary logic for, because otherwise, who would attack India? Who would attack Pakistan? China is not going to attack Pakistan. So by raising a bogey of war with India, okay, so they are making, so the kind of luxury with the Pakistani army, okay, Pakistan military elite is enjoying today, because if the relationship becomes normal, then the people in Pakistan would ask, why so much defense budget? Why do you require that? So they will not be able to enjoy, the privileges and the luxury which they are enjoying now. So, in fact, it is the interest of the elites. It is not the interest of Pakistan. It is the interest of the Pakistani ruling elite, whether the political elite or the military elite, to ensure that the relationship between India and Pakistan doesn't become normal. I read your point. So that is why Muhammad Yunus says that it is not the interest of political leaders. It is not the interest of a nation. It is the interest of the elite. What a point. Point is clear, or still any doubt on this? So why it is said that it is the interest of the elites and not the interest of a nation? I've got my point. Now, second concept that we'll take up now, uh, in continuation of after national interest. All right, thank you so much. The concept of security. So the second concept is after national interest is the concept of security. This concept of security in national interest. All right. Why security is a very vital component of international politics. Security is a very vital component of international politics because of the fact that existence of the state depends on that. Existence of a state, the physical existence of a state, physical identity of the state, okay, the sovereignty of the state depends upon its existence. All right. So how to ensure that the physical integrity, territorial integrity of the state or physical existence of the state remains unchallenged for all the time to come. So for that, you need to strengthen your defense system. You need to strengthen your defense system because your security could be strong, or you will be able to achieve the goal of security only when your defense system is very strong. So why security is a very important concept of international politics or of foreign policy, because on it depends the existence of a state. And to ensure our security, to strengthen our security, we need a very strong defense system. All right. And obviously, to strengthen your security base, to strengthen your defense system, all right, what do you require? You require power. So the concept of national interest, concept of security, concept of power, concept of security and concept of power, they are closely interlinked. Because unless and until you have a power, your defense system will not be strong. And unless and until your defense system is not very strong, your security will not be very strong. So your security, your defense, all right, and power. Because power is a tool to strengthen your defense, and your defense is a tool to strengthen your security. So power, defense, security is very closely interlinked. All right. Now the question is, why security is a very pressing issue, a very, very important component of international politics. Why security is a very important component of international politics, that is the point that we need to understand. Why security is considered to be a very important component of international politics. Now, two reasons for this. One reason for this is that the entire international politics, okay, entire international realm, international domain, entire international domain is anarchical in character. Anarchical in character, there is a lot of uncertainty. You never know what is going to happen. You are always gripped with the sense of insecurity. Why? Because as we are talking about the realist theory of international relations, realism international politics, and what Morgenthau said is that the entire international domain is anarchical in character. The entire structure of international politics, international relations is anarchical in nature. Right? And because of anarchical character of the international domain, okay, there is always a threat to the stability and peace of the world. So I'm trying to answer a question, why security is a very important component of international politics. For that, two reasons I have given you. One, anarchical international domain. Means entire international domain is anarchical. Okay, the behavior of the country, the behavior of the states are unpredictable. Okay, every country is trying to strengthen its power base. All right, so anarchical international domain or anarchical international domain is the first reason why security is very important component of international politics. And second is that there is always a threat to the stability and peace of the world. So because of these two reasons, every country wants to strengthen its security. All right. Now, we'll be taking into consideration two theories of, when we talk about theories of security. First, we'll take the realist view. You are already aware of that. So just I will give a sweeping reference to that. And then I will take a liberal view. All right. I will take a realist view and I will take a liberal view of the concept of security in international politics. The realist theory of international national realist theory of security means realist view of security is primarily in context of the national security, primarily in context of national security. And according to realist theory, each state must have the capacity for self-defense. So if you want to strengthen your security, okay, you need to have a very strong self-defense. You need to have very strong self-defense. Without a strong self-defense, you cannot take care of your security. So what is important for achieving security is a very strong self-defense. All right. And the realist view on security gives more emphasis on the military power. All right. Without military power, it doesn't talk about the economic security. It doesn't talk about the food security. It doesn't. So its concept of security, realist theory of concept of security, is primarily on account of what is known as the military power. So it is only by enhancing your military power that you can achieve security for the state. So two things: one, strong self-defense, and to have a strong self-defense, you need to give more emphasis on the military power. All right, because if every country, think for the situation, if every country starts giving emphasis on the military power, then what is going to happen? According to realist theory, to strengthen your security, you need to have a strong capacity for self-defense. And to logical corollary of this is that for that you need to have a strong military power. You need to give emphasis on extending your military power. And when every country gives emphasis on its military power, then what is going to happen? That will lead to a situation of security dilemma. Country A taking some step for enhancing its security, creating a suspicion and a sense of security in country B. Country B taking some step for strengthening its security base, again leading to some kind of suspicion in the minds of country A. And again, A will take some step to further enhance its security. So this kind of thing will go on. Why this kind of things will go on? And that is how arms race picks up. Okay, why? Because of the problem of what is known as security dilemma. That I must not be left behind. If B becomes more powerful, then we can attack A at any point of time. So I must not be left behind. So again, A will also take some step to strengthen its security base. So that will lead to a situation of security dilemma. So when the more you try to strengthen your security base, more would be the problem of what is known as the security dilemma. All right. So what is the situation of security dilemma? It means security dilemma is a condition in which action taken by one actor to improve its national security is interpreted by another actor, okay, as a challenge to its own security. So it will lead to move and it will lead to counter move. So one country strengthening its military base, it is interpreted by another country as a challenge to its own security. So it will take some counter moves for the strength, and that will lead to a situation of security dilemma. So we move from a question of security to the question of security dilemma according to what the realist view is. All right. Now, when we talk about security dilemma, all right, there are two components of security dilemma. Okay? And we must understand that. What are the two components of security dilemma? Okay. Uh, components of okay, two components. Okay, what are they? Let me explain that. One is dilemma interpretation. Okay, and the second one is dilemma of response. So, two components of security security dilemma. One is dilemma interpretation, and another is dilemma response. Let us try to understand. Dilemma interpretation is this is about the motive. This is about the intention. This is about the capability of the opponent in building a power. Now, means you are not very sure about the motive of other person. Dilemma of interpretation. If A is strengthening its security base, A is buying some military equipment. Now, the dilemma is about the motive. What is the motive of A behind strengthening its security? Does it merely wants to strengthen its security, or it wants to attack you? Got my point? So there would be a dilemma regarding that. So what is the motive? What is the intention? So the opponent is building up its power. Now, why it is doing that? What is the motive behind it? What are the intentions? Got my point? So this will lead to dilemma of interpretation. Now, if A is doing that, B doesn't know. All right. Now, India is trying to buy S-400 missiles from Russia. Now, what is India's intention? I'll give you an example. One more example I will give you. So, India importing S-400 missiles from Russia. Now, what is the interpretation? What is the interpretation by China? No, why China? Why India is doing it? Is India planning to do an attack on China? So, China's response or China's security dilemma would be dependent on what does China think about India's motive or about India's intention. Got my point? You know what was one of the another example? What was the biggest reason for the recent military incursion on the Galwan, on the Sino-Indian border? What was the reason for this? India was, see, the border infrastructure. Uh, if you compare the border development of the border infrastructure in India, and if you compare that with the border infrastructure development in China, there is a great difference. China's border infrastructure is much more stronger than India's border structure. India's border structure. So our borders infrastructure are very weak. During last few years, India has been trying to strengthen its border infrastructure by building up, constructing roads and doing some exercise over there. Now, India's attempt to strengthen its border infrastructure was interpreted by Pakistan that India is planning to do an attack on China, because China is always a very suspicious country. So China thought that by when Indian troops kept on moving on the border, or India's border infrastructure was enhanced, so they thought India is planning to do an attack on India. So that is why they did what they had to do. The Galwan tragedy was a response to that. Now, when China was doing the same thing, when China was strengthening its border infrastructure, building border roads, India never reacted. But when India did that, because India did not interpret in that sense, but China interpreted in that sense. So that is what is known as dilemma of interpretation. Now, coming down to dilemma of response. What is the meaning of dilemma of response? Right? That how should a country which is facing a dilemma, how the country should respond? Okay. Now, you have seen Chinese response when India was trying to enhance its border infrastructure. China retaliated. So, dilemma of response means how the concerned country should react. Whether it should take a military confrontation with its opponent, or it should try to diffuse some tension. Now, if China would be doing anything like that, India would always try to diffuse tension with China. All right. But if India does anything of that sort, so China would seek a military confrontation with India. So the response of India and China, response of India's security dilemma towards China, or response of China's security dilemma towards India would entirely be different. So that is what is known as dilemma of response. How do you react to that security dilemma? That is it. All right. Any doubt? Any doubt? Is the concept very clear? So what we are doing, we were discussing, we had started with the concept of security. In that context, we are talking about the realist view of the concept of security. And in that context, we talked about security dilemma and dilemma of interpretation and dilemma of response. Any doubt, any question on this? You can ask. Point is clear? Okay, thank you so much. Now, coming to the liberal view of security. Okay, so far we're talking about the realist view. Now let us talk about the liberal view. Liberal view of security is primarily in context of the two methods. One is through disarmament and arms control. They believe that security of a state, security of a nation could be strengthened by disarmament and arms control, either by eliminating weapons, eliminating arms, or reducing the quantum of arms, either eliminating the weapons at all weapons, eliminating weapons of war, what is known as disarmament, which is not possible. And the second is through arms control. All right. Arms control means by controlling, by reducing, or by limiting, or by completely abolishing. What a point. By controlling, by reducing, by limiting, or by completely abolishing weapons, security can be achieved. This is the one method that they are doing. Because they believe, liberal theory believes, that it is possible to have an agreement because nobody wants war. No country wants war. So liberals believe that arms proliferation, which is a major threat to the security of the world, according to liberal view, arms proliferation is the major threat to the security of the world. And according to them, since no country wants war, everybody wants peace and stability, so it is possible to control the proliferation of weapons, because proliferation of weapons is a major risk to the security of the world. But according to liberal theory, according to liberal view, okay, arms proliferation can be controlled. And why it can be controlled? Because nobody wants war. Everybody wants peace and stability. Right. And according to liberal theory, having fewer weapons, if the number of weapons gets reduced, it becomes very few. So obviously, this will lead to strengthen the security base of the country, of the states. So the lesser weapons you have, more are the chances of security. All right. But for that, what the liberal theory says is that for that, all the states, they have to agree together, had to be agreed together to carry out the task of arms control and disarmament. Means countries, they have to agree together. So according to liberal theory, first method of enhancing your security or for having a secured world, have a security, is disarmament and arms control. All right. The second method, according to liberal view, what they're saying is through the mechanism of collective security. All right. Means what is the meaning of collective security? So first method, according to liberals, is, as I've told you, is disarmament, arms control. And the second method of ensuring security is what they say is the mechanism of collective security. Now, what is collective security? What is collective security? Correct. Okay. And how do we achieve this? Pradeep, you are right when you're saying that the collective action by the countries of the world, okay, the nations, they act jointly, nations together to collectively respond to any threat or any terror, any war, any war that takes place. Okay, the countries should be um, collectively responding to that. Now, what do we mean with this? This is based on what is known as this is based on the philosophy of one for all and all for one. One for all and all for this is the, that is the basis of collective security action. Yes, if A is attacking a country B, so if A is attacking a country B, A is an aggressor. Okay, A is an aggressor, so B is a country which is attacked. So A is an aggressor country, and B is suffering because of A's aggression. Now, other countries, C, D, E, F, G, H, all other countries, they will consider this attack not only an attack on B, but it will be considered as an attack on all of them. Try to consider the point. Try to consider the point. A is attacking B, A is doing aggression against B, okay, but all other countries will take it as an attack on them. And jointly, they will try to take action against A. That is why it is called one for all and all for one. What is the point? One for all and all for one means all the countries, all other countries, other than the country which has been attacked, will be taking joint efforts, will be coming together to take action against A because A has done the aggression. That is what is the concept of collective security. And the current United Nations, okay, the current United Nations is working on that. This current structure of security as provided by United Nations and as provided by the what is known as the what is known as the charter, the UN charter, okay, is on this basis only. So the current basis of international security is the collective security. So collective security is a mechanism for ensuring peace and stability in the world. And how it happens? That if in case country A, I'll give an example. In the year 1950, probably I must have given you this example in some context. In 1950, North Korea had done aggression against South Korea. All right. Now, North Korea had done aggression against South Korea, and North Korea was declared as an aggressor country by UN Security Council. Now, UN Security Council, under UN Charter, mandated certain countries. Now, UN Security Council is empowered to name the countries who would be taking action against the aggressor country. All right. It can advise all the countries to come together to take action against that country. But that is not required. So it can identify 5, 6 powerful countries who would be taking action against the aggressor country. So when North Korea had attacked South Korea in the year 1950, right, so UN Security Council mandated action against North Korea by a certain number of countries. Unfortunately, at that point of time, what happened is that China, which was a member of permanent member of UN Security Council, okay, and was a part of that resolution, which mandated certain countries to take action in North Korea. Unfortunately, China, instead of supporting UN's action against North Korea, China joined war in favor of North Korea against South Korea. Are you any point? So China, so that is so. But what is essential for us to understand is that the concept of collective security is based on the logic of one for all and all for one. Means the theory of collective security is based on a presumption that aggression of a country can be resisted by a joint action taken by a number of states, and on that basis only, action was mandated by a group of countries against North Korea in 1950. So 1950 was the first application of the concept of collective security. See, I'm not going to put much emphasis on collective security right now, because collective security we are discussing as a part of a liberal view of security. All right. But I just wanted to clarify the concept. All right. So it is based on the philosophy that aggression of a country can be met, can be controlled, can be tackled, can be handled, can be undertaken by a number of states. All right. Now, and because of the concept of what is known as collective security, the concept of collective security has replaced the concept of national security. So gradually, we are moving from the concept of national security towards the broader notion of international security. How collective security mechanism helps you in moving from national security to international security? I would like you to answer this question. Under collective security, okay, the emphasis gets shifted from national security to international security. How collective security becomes a mechanism of shifting of emphasis from national security to collective security? I want you to answer this question. Have you understood my question? My question is how the concept of how there is how because of collective security there is an emphasis from national security to the international security. Collective security leads to movement of emphasis, shifting of emphasis from national security to international security. The question is clear or not? The question is clear. Or question is not clear. I said when you talk about collective security, to create multipolar world, collective security emphasizes on national international security. Okay, not exactly. You see, let me repeat my question, and in that question you will find the answer. According to liberal view of security, liberal view of security is nothing but a view of collective security. And in collective security, there is shifting of emphasis from national security to international security. Why? Just let me clarify this part. See, when you talk about national security, this means a country is individually responsible for its own security. In the concept of national security, each country trade of other common motives, countries from groups and support each other. Okay, now let me answer. When you talk about national security, means you are a nation, a country is individually responsible for its own security. In national security, a country is individually responsible for its own security. Means India is responsible for its own security. Pakistan is responsible for its own security. China is responsible for its own security. Japan is responsible for its own security. National security means individual responsibility of a nation state. Okay? National security means individual responsibility of a nation state for its security. Right? Now, but when we talk about collective security, this means apart from you, other countries are also responsible for your security. When North Korea attacked South Korea, it was not only North Korea which was responsible for its own security. Yes, North Korea is responsible. But when you consider an attack on country as an attack on yourself, one for all and all for one, this means the responsibility of a security of a country becomes international. The responsibility of a security becomes international. In national security, it is your individual responsibility, but in collective security, it is everybody's responsibility. So national security gets converted into international security. So that is why I said in collective security mechanism, there is a shift of emphasis from national security to international security. That was the point, what I had in mind. Is the point clear now? All right. When we talk about collective security, we have understood the meaning of collective security. All right. The concept of collective security based on certain presumption. When UN security, when UN the charter was being created, and when they created the mechanism for collective security, and that is the mechanism through which peace can be established in the world and war could be avoided. This concept of collective security is based on certain presumptions. One presumption, the first presumption for working of collective security and the success of collective security depends upon that. So I'm also trying to answer a question: what are the things, what are the conditions on which success of a collective security depends? Number one, there must not be any preponderant power. Any existence of any preponderant power means which could become a threat to everyone's security. So roughly, states should be equal in power and strength. Roughly, all states should have equal power or strength, or at least, even if they do not have equal power, okay, at least there must not be any preponderant power. If there is any preponderant power, okay, which can sway every other country, so no country should be a preponderant power. So either there should be parity of power among countries of the world, or no country should be a preponderant power. This is the first condition. All right. The second condition on which the success of collective security depends, that all states, all nation states, they must be willing to bear the cost and responsibility of defending one another. Not like 1950, when China, instead of supporting the collective security against North Korea, joins war in favor of North Korea. Not like that. So second condition is that all states must be willing to bear the cost and undertake the responsibility of defending one another. If there is an attack on you, now what has happened? Example I can give you. Why the mechanism of collective security did not prevent the war, did not prevent the Russian attack on Ukraine. What happened? Now, look into the situation. Had UN been very active and had collective security mechanism has been taken. So it is very difficult, because any collective security action, if you want, that would be possible. That would be possible only when all the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, they agree on that. Not a point. But what would happen? Russia itself is a member of UN Permanent UN Security Council. So any Security Council decision regarding collective security action against Russia, Russia would have vetoed. So that was not possible. But much more important than this, what is important for us to understand is that even other countries, they talked about, Britain talked about, other European countries they talked about, European Union talked about, US talked about, that we will defend, we will go all out way to defend Ukraine. But the war still has not come to an end. And what happened to the US promise that we will defend, we are going to defend and we will defend what is known as Ukraine. Nothing has been done. So second point is very important, that all states must be willing to bear the cost and responsibility of defending one another. Now, 40% of the gas supply to the Europe is done by Russia. So European countries are also not prepared to take action against Russia. And that is why. All right. So second condition is very important, that all states must be willing to bear the cost and hold the responsibility of defending and securing one another. And that has not happened. Third condition. No, what limitation, Pradeep, you're talking about? Responsibility of defending can be at the cost of any. Hey, the point is, see, when there is a collective security action, it is not that only the aggressor country will be suffering. Other countries also will be suffering. When you talk about one for all and all for one, means what? You have to go all out for supporting the aggressor country. Maybe you also, the country which is attacked, the countries which are taking collective security action, this would be prepared to suffer also. I'm not denying that, but that is the mechanism of collective security. See, when let me give you a very crude example. Now you are moving with your friend on the road. Now somebody is trying to hit you. Okay. Now what your friend should do? Should your friend run away from there? Just because he said that if I intervene, I will also get hit. So thinking that he should run away from you, or he should remain there. He should be bear to get some hit on himself. That is what is called known as collective security. All right. Third important condition. Will collective security action Will collective security action include sharing of defense resources? Yes. Decide to include sharing of defense resources. Yes, yes, yes. Dilution of defense capability of one country. Yes, it will include that. It will include. So the third condition, there must be some international body which has a moral authority and political capacity to take effective action. What is the meaning of this? Collective security action, to implement collective security mechanism, there's a need for an overreaching body. There's a need for an international organization, because who will implement that? But my point. So you need an umbrella. You need an overreaching umbrella. You need an international organization. Okay. And that international organization will be responsible for mandating action. Got my point? So you need an international body. You need because the international body is a moral authority. United Nations works on the basis of what is known as international law. UN Charter is international law. All right. So it must have the political capacity and it must have a moral authority to take effective action. And it would not work because moral authority, yes, UN has the moral authority, but it should also have a political capacity. It should be able to take effective decision. It should be able to take an effective action. And why I said that in most of the wars in the world, UN has failed to take, even though there is a provision for collective security action, but UN has failed to take collective security route. It has failed to take collective security action. Why? Because it doesn't have the political capacity. The structure of UN is such that for any action to be taken against an aggressor country, all 5 permanent members of UN Security Council, they must support that. No country should be using its veto power. So third condition, that for any any concept of collective security, what is desired is there should be an international body having the moral as well as the political authority to take an effective action. This doesn't happen. All right. The fourth point, in fact, a corollary of the third point I just said is that after the First World War, League of Nations, and after the Second World War, United Nations. The formation of League of Nations after the First World War and formation of United Nations after the Second World War was based on the ideals of collective security. When we discuss about the UN's achievement, why UN failed, what is UN's achievement, what UN are supposed to do, and why UN has not been able to do that. At that point of time, we'll talk about all this in detail. All right. So that was about the collective security in very, very. Any question, any doubt, if you have in mind, you can ask me. What we are discussing just now, we are discussing the conditions required for collective security. And in that context, I talked about 3 conditions. First condition, I said there must be a parity of power, equality of power, roughly the countries should be equal in power, or there must not be any preponderant state. Second said is that all states must be able to bear the cost and responsibility of defending one against another, not like China. And third, I said there must be an international body which has the moral and the political authority to carry out the mandate, okay, of taking effective action. So these are the 3 essential conditions for collective security. Now coming to the question of how security can be strengthened. Okay. We are still on the concept of security. We moved from security to the concept of security dilemma. From security dilemma, we move to the we move to the concept of a collective security, and from there we are moving. I'm trying to answer the question: how can security be ensured? Okay, we are still discussing the topic of security. How can security be ensured? Now, before that, let me see. You have written some questions. Good question. Very good question. See, it's a big topic. We'll talk about, when we talk about the concept of human security. At that point of time, I'll answer your question. I'll take your question at that point of time. You will understand when I talk about the human security concept, food security, security from the pandemic, health security. So we'll take this. This question will automatically get answered tomorrow. Don't worry. All right. So how can security be ensured? The first point, how to strengthen how can security be ensured in international politics, international relation, is that we need to have a security regime, or we need to have a security community to manage disputes that help us in avoiding war. Creation of a security community or creation of a regional community which helps us in managing our disputes and help us in avoiding a war. Just on the line of European Union, or like an ASEAN, or like a SAARC. Now SAARC is dysfunctional. It is not working actually. It is the most disintegrated region. But, or OPEC countries, or Organization of African States, OAS, this the first important measure that we can take in order to strengthen security in the world is that there is a need for a security regime, or there is a need for a security community in the form of regional organizations, which can contribute towards managing disputes. For example, any dispute within the European Union would be managed by European Union. There is a mechanism for that. Any mechanism, any dispute between ASEAN nations could be managed within that forum. Any dispute in Asia should be managed. South Asia should be managed within the SAARC forum. So that is one of the ways that we can think of. Right? Second method that we can think of is advancement of democratization, advancement of democratization in the world. Means respect for rights, respect for liberties and rights and freedom of the people. All right. So by advancing democracy in different parts of the world, within the United Nations, there is a UN Democracy Forum. There is a forum for strengthening democracy in the world within the United Nations that was sponsored by US and India. Both India and US are the contributors. And for that, they have created a fund. UN Democracy Fund has been created. India and US are one of the two largest contributors to that. Because when there is a democracy, you may not think of war. So advancement of democracy, reduction of totalitarian states. So the second mechanism that is suggested is advancement of democracy in the world. Okay. The third mechanism that is suggested for strengthening security of the world is to increase what is known as economic interdependence of the countries. The more is the trade, more is the economic interdependence of the countries, the lesser are the chances of a war between the countries. So if you really want to have a security in the world, if you really want to have strengthen your security, okay. See, giving an example, how can the relationship between India and Pakistan be improved? How can India feel secured? How can India enhance its security so far as Pakistan is concerned? The best thing is that to increase the trade between the two countries. When the economies of the two countries become interlinked, all right. Again, giving example from China, what happens? That why, despite there being a larger degree of border dispute between India and China, still you will find 62 onwards, there has not been an all-out war between the two countries. And what is responsible for this security? Except for this recent Gulf treasury, right from 60s, right from 60s till now, right from 60s till now, Sino-Indian border between India and Pakistan was absolutely a bullet-free border, except the recent Gulf treaty. It was absolutely a bullet-free border. With Pakistan, you had several wars. But with China, despite there being a dispute, there is no major war between the two countries. Why? Because of interdependency of the two countries in terms of trade. So one of the measures that is suggested for enhancing security is economic interdependence of the countries that can prevent a war. I'll give you an example. If we talk about trade between India and Pakistan, okay, the maximum trade, now after Pulwama attack, there is no trade between the two countries. But the maximum trade that was there between the two countries at any point of time was 2.6 billion US dollars of trade. India's trade with Pakistan was maximum 2.6 billion US dollars before Pulwama attack. Now, out of the 2.6 billion dollars of trade, 2.2 billion dollars was the export that India was doing to Pakistan. And what was coming from Pakistan was just 0.4 billion US dollars. Okay. So there is a study by Mark Barcoli and Nisa Taneja. They are the two research scholars who did a study on a possibility of increasing the trade between India and Pakistan. And what was the outcome of that research? That there is a possibility of 405% increase. There is a possibility of a 405% increase in the trade between India and Pakistan. If both India and Pakistan, they start trading with each other with the full potential, with full capacity utilization, if India and Pakistan start trading with each other with full capacity utilization, there could be 405% increase in the trade between the two countries. So the point I was trying to suggest. So why there is no major war between India and China? Why? Because there is a lot of trade between the two countries. There is interdependency for the trade. So economic interdependency can prevent a war and can provide security. With Pakistan, why it is not there? Because their trade is very minuscule. So there's hardly any trade now. If the trade between India and Pakistan increases, so increasing the trade means increasing interdependence, and that can create a sense of security. I hope you have understood the point. Now let me answer your question. Good question, Rakesh. You have asked slightly in different context. Is collective security, if collective security works in Ukraine, Ukraine-Russia war, what about the national interest of Russia with Ukraine? Yes, you are right. See, what I'm trying to tell you is that every country will have its logic. Now, let me tell you, if you believe that Russia had a genuine cause, because Russia was getting killed, as I have also explained it, and that is why Russia was forced to attack Ukraine. Now the question is, see, two ways we could resolve this. Okay, if you consider Russia to be an aggressor country, you could take collective security. Or the other mechanism which is possible that we have been suggesting, the Indian Prime Minister has been suggesting that which country has taken. See, Indian Prime Minister has only been talking about, Narendra Modi ji has been only talking about that, yes, Russia should restrain itself. Okay, and there should be a resolution of this issue. But the point is, which national leader, which international leader? You talk about Britain, you talk about Russia, you talk about US, you talk about Britain, you talk about Germany, you talk about India, you talk about France. Which country has taken initiative of bringing the two conflicting parties on the negotiation table? I'm getting my point. So this means none of the countries, they are interested in that. No, China is a good friend of Russia. India is a good friend of Russia. Now you tell me which country has taken. I'm not saying that collective security is the last resort. But the point is, if you do not want to use collective security mechanism, use another mechanism. Use your high officers, bring both of them on the negotiation table. But no, realistically, nobody is interested in that. US is not interested in that, because US has been able to create a fear psychosis in Europe that Russia could attack Europe. So by creating a fear psychosis, US has been able to sell more and more of its weapons to Europe. So it is subserving US's interest. Got my point? All right, just let me complete this point. We have just 2-3 minutes left. So we are discussing how security can be ensured. One, I said, by creating a security regime or security community like the European Union, or advancement of democratization. And third, said economic interdependence. The fourth is global no war pact. This country is ready for that. I'm not discussing whether it is possible or not, but yes, when you are asked the question, how can security be ensured? So you can write all these points. Global no war pact. Let there be a pact on all, between all major powers of the world. Global no war pact. Nobody would not be attacking anyone. Let there be global no war pact. All right. Other measures we can suggest: denuclearization. All the countries, all the nuclear powers should be dismantling the nuclear weapons if you want to have a security. Dismantle your nuclear weapons. In fact, India had piloted a resolution in the United Nations regarding phase-wise elimination of nuclear weapons in the year 1996. By the year 2020, the world would have become nuclear-free if the nuclear powers had agreed to India's resolution. India had piloted a resolution inside UN, led by other 221 countries, of a phase-wise elimination of nuclear weapons. Within 24 years, from 1996 till 2020, the world would have become nuclear free. So by doing denuclearization or by disarmament, we can still ensure security of the world. All right. Yet another way of enhancing security in the world is globalization, and that is happening also. Globalization or integration of the economies of the world. So by doing globalization or integrating the economies of the world, we can at least, and that has helped. Because after the Second World War, there has been no major world war. Large-scale war, regional wars have taken place, but there has not been any major world global war. So to that extent, you can say that to that extent, UN has been successful in preventing the occurrence of a major global war. All right. So that is about how security can be ensured. Some points I've given you. Tomorrow, when we will start with the concept of human security. All right. Thank you so much, all of you. God bless all of you. See you tomorrow, same time. All right. God bless you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.